Hey, thanks for catching this replay of Strategy Solutions and Sanity. The show is all about showing the messy and vulnerable side of what it takes to actually grow your business. We go live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Mountain, that's 9 a.m. Pacific and 12 p.m. Eastern. So in our episodes, you might see some comments and engagements from some of our listeners that did join us live. If you want to be part of that action and maybe even pick the brains of our future guests and have that special Q&A time with our guests, then make sure to join us live at 10 a.m. on YouTube or on LinkedIn. We have a guest today who, by all means, seems like she's fairly well composed most of the time, but she's going to let us into her world and the moments that have made her go insane. She is an awesome kind of like understanding energies, but also tech nerd. So please welcome Sarah Gonnella.
Thank you so much for having me. I have enjoyed getting to know you, and it's really just an honor to be here today. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, every time that we have connected and chatted, it's just always quite refreshing, I would say. So give us a little bit of an insight into all the different things you do, into that energy and the nerdy side of what you do.
Yeah, I am Sarah Gonnella. I'm a partner at Full Sail Partners, and I oversee marketing, business development, sales, and the CRM consulting side of a technology firm. And we focus on selling, implementing, and connecting to the Deltek Vantage Point product, which is a project-based firms. And a lot of my job is really networking, strategy, and identifying how to overcome those challenges that are thrown at us. And I really purposely sought out technology with every position that I was in. And prior to joining this, I was in the AEC, or the architectural and engineering construction industry, for almost 10 years prior to really getting into the tech world. I also am a host of Boy Bass, which stands for Bring Out Your Badass Self, where I really focus on engaging my audience about growth-minded topics to help them reflect, to become their fearless, authentic self. I guess on the personal side, I became a bonus mom when I married my husband more than 15 years ago. We then had a daughter together, and I was a much more established in my career before I became a mom. And looking back, I can't imagine being a young mom. I would say maybe on the more non-traditional answer of who I am, I would say I'm unapologetically me, while continuing to reflect to be the best version of myself. And I would say the common themes of my life is that no matter what's been thrown at me, I find an opportunity in trauma, the turmoil, and the chaos because of what I've learned about our mindset.
That is so important. I mean, so many cool things that we said there, but that last bit of like, there's so much opportunity and like the kind of shitty moments of life. Like there's some limbo stuff happening for me on the personal side of life, and for me that goes against the grain of my personality completely to just be out in limbo. And I'm like, you know what? This is an opportunity in patience, in hopefulness. And like, I always would consider myself as a realist, but I'm really a pessimist, pretending that I'm not a pessimist. I'm like, okay, this is the opportunity to grow a little bit and try to be an optimist. And so it sounds like you have really found ways to take advantage of those challenging moments in life. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, early on in my life with trauma that happened, and as I continued to grow and really understand more about myself, I really saw that the things that happened to me were really the things that became my strengths. Like, had those
Mhm.
negative things not happened to me, I wouldn't have become the person that I am today. And so with like all the different things that I look at in my life, I'm like, oh, but if this hadn't happened, this wouldn't happen. So it's that reflection back that ends up giving you that insight. So now I'm able to use that, the past, to help me with reframing things and looking at, okay, well, why is this happening? Like, where am I supposed to be growing, or what is it I'm supposed to be learning, or where's the opportunity in this? So those are really the questions I tend to ask myself now, because I've seen the patterns over the years, that every time I've had real devastating trauma, turmoil, challenges, whatever it might be, they've always turned out for the better because I embraced them and I found the lesson in them.
That's interesting because earlier you said you were unapologetically yourself. And
Yeah.
so, what I've noticed with some people where they, maybe have some regrets about the things that have happened and they can't quite see how those hard moments have created these strengths. They can't get out of that survivor kind of perspective,
Yes.
is they will also flaunt the term unapologetically themselves, but it's not coming from a place of like healing. It's coming from a place of like, these are the things that protect me, right? And so it sounds like you have quite a different perspective, because I'll be honest, most people that say that they're unapologetically themselves, I'm like, please step aside, like I don't got time for all the space you're trying to take up in this room. But again, it sounds like you taking a different, maybe more balanced approach. Could you break that down for me?
Yeah, and you notice what I added to it. I said, while also reflecting about
Mm-hmm.
myself. And that's where I think the difference is. And I do find that there is a difference between a victim mentality and a survivor mentality. People that are still in victimhood, like, oh, woe is me. This is still happening to me. Why is this happening to me? Why is this? Those types of things. It's not understanding and embracing the reasons why this may be happening, like why you're still doing this, or why the reasons are the repeated patterns are happening is because you haven't learned
Mm-hmm.
the lesson. Like you're still like, okay, reflect. Like it's happening in different ways, but it's really still the same thing that you're not learning.
Oh man, I just talked about this with someone else the other day of like my husband and I getting in the same arguments. And there were times when I was like, you just care more about being right. And I'm like, oh shit, no, I care more. Like I've got to learn a lesson on pride here. It's like was not his fault at all in some of those things. So how has this level of personal reflection, how has that impacted, being a mom and all of the different professional kind of initiatives that you're focused on as well?
I think you hit on a really good topic there when you said the ego. You have to really start to release the ego in the things that you're doing, and it's hard because we want to feel right. We want to feel
Mhm.
all of those different types of things, and that's really going back to the defense mode of,
Mhm.
well, if I'm not right, what does that mean? It means, what does that mean, that I'm stupid? Or it's that type of thing. It's looking at, okay, well, if this triggered me, or if this happened, why is it that triggered me, or why is it that bothered me? For me, I found that those are invitations to dig a little bit deeper and understand more about myself. And I think the biggest thing that I would say is that I have always looked at the mistakes that I make and looked at them as, okay, I didn't do that well, and also owning up to it and saying
Mhm.
I did a really crappy job in however it is that I was communicating. Like the other day, I remember I was having an argument with my husband, and I was sitting there reflecting on it. I'm still mad at the situation, but I also
Mhm.
was like, oh wow, Sarah, I was like, that wasn't nice. Like that wasn't good. And I turned to him and I said, I shouldn't have said that. I said that was horrible of me. And I said, I apologize for saying that.
Mhm.
And he was just like, thank you. Because he was brewing as well. And but it's that type of reflection of
Mhm.
understanding that we're going to make mistakes. And part of it is sitting in the uncomfortableness and saying, okay, well, what do I need to reflect on this? And still feeling and honoring the feelings that you're having, but also understanding how it is that you can move forward and how you can reframe whatever the situation is. Or and I always go back to how it is that I need to grow as a person.
Mhm. Now, do you ever feel like there gets a point where like, okay, now we've overanalyzed something?
Mm. Yep, absolutely. Sometimes, and so I do meet with a depth psychologist, and
Mhm.
most people don't really know what that is, but we analyze dreams, and we go through, and so your dreams, and when you sit there and meditate and visualize, and I have what's called aphantasia. So whenever I close my eyes, I don't actually see images, but I dream very vividly. And
Okay.
so but I can still feel like my body and the things that I'm feeling, and I still have things that come to mind. And it's really inviting your mind to understand your unconscious. And that is really what I've been focusing more on, to be able to self
Mm,
reflect and understand, because 80% of the actions we take are unknown to us. And
mm.
if we don't dig deeper into why it is we're really doing things, then we can't continue to learn why it is we're taking the actions, or how to really truly become the best version of ourselves.
And let me just have kind of my own stupid and dumb moment here, because you said when you close your eyes, you don't see images.
Yeah.
Do most people see images when they
Yeah.
close their eyes? Like their mind just starts going? Or like is it like there's a vivid image in front of them about something?
It's different for everyone. I learned this later on in life. And if you close your eyes and you say, "Can you see a red apple?" Now imagine that the red apple, you're biting into the red apple. Uh, Most people can see like a red apple, or they see a pink apple, or some people will see a gray apple, like an outline. And then there are some people that see nothing but black. Uh,
Mm.
and that's what I see when I close my eyes. I see nothing.
This is big. So I'm a little bit of a book nerd, y'all, and so I've seen some reels of like people saying like, "Oh, this is what I imagine for like a certain scene in a book," and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Whoa!" Like you got a whole movie played in your head. Like I'm not there. I'm not. I'm a creative problem solver. You got chaos. I'll get creative, and I'll blow your mind on that. But if you're asking for anything legitimately creative, artsy, etc., it's not happening for me. Yeah, okay, so okay, you've mentioned a few different things as well of like, how am I being stupid, or like, hey, just accepting like we're all gonna make mistakes. So what have those moments in business been for you of like, we've made a mistake and maybe that didn't really feel like an excusable mistake. This was just kind of like flat out dumb. And how are we gonna move past this?
There's been, I think, lots of things that I've made from a, like, even with employees, for example. And I can say that when I first started and became a leader, I wasn't taught to be a leader. You don't get training, and it's like, oh, here are the things that you should do.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times as leaders or as people, we think that everyone thinks the same way we do. And as you start to become more of a leader, you realize, oh, I need to be more adaptable. I need to be more precise in like the end in mind. This is what we have in mind. And so I would say early on in my career, I approached things as if everybody approached things the way that I did. And I had to learn to be able to focus on, oh, I don't need to, you don't have to do it, 1, 2, 3, 4 the way I do. You might do it 1, 5, 7, 8, whatever, in order to get there. But we need to be clear on what the end in mind is. And then allow people the freedom, one, to make mistakes, which is I think the bigger thing that a lot of times managers tend to not do, is they try to help people out and fix their problems along the way, instead of allowing them to make the mistakes, and then also allowing people the freedom to approach it the way that they see fit, as long as you have agreement of how it is, the end result of what it is you're both looking for.
Oof, that is so hard to do for a lot of people, especially when you're first growing out your team, to let go of how something gets done. Which for a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I gotta have processes and SOPs, and I've got to have this whole thing in place before I bring someone into this role." And it's like, well, are you going to let them figure out how they want to do it? And so it's interesting also that you use the word precise alongside being adaptable. And
Mhm.
so it sounds like we're using the word precision to be synonymous with clarity. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So how did you kind of navigate that of having to really let go and let somebody else shine?
I think that it's seeing the results of not being what you want. And so it's making the mistake yourself and going, oh, I need to reevaluate how it is that I'm approaching this. And
Mm.
I think sometimes it's also finding people that you admire, people that you know that are beyond and in a position that you are not in, that you think that they do a really good job, and then having that conversation with them and asking them questions. How do you approach this? Or this is the
Mm,
challenge that I'm dealing with. When have you dealt with this, or how is it that you might suggest? So I think that one of the things as leaders is that we sometimes don't always seek out the mentors, the people that have been there, done that. And a lot of times we are like, oh, we're in this position. If I ask someone, they'll think that I don't know what I'm doing. Well, you don't know what you're doing. Just, so accept that you don't have all the answers, and go seek out those mentors that you admire and you like their particular style, or you've seen that they've learned the lessons along the way, and
mm.
learn from them.
Well, hold on. Let me say good morning to Lisa and Kim who are in the comments, and then also Jesse's like, but what if I admire me, right? What I'm also hearing in that is getting comfortable with that I don't know, right? And just
Mm,
asking the questions. I know for me, I mean, especially if we go back to, I wouldn't consider my whole childhood traumatic, but there are things that impress upon you, right? And so for me, I was always the kid that got told, we don't have to worry about you, you got it, right? And like all A's was easy for me. I actually English class my senior year, I skipped every English class. I just went and got waffles, to be honest, because it was a morning class, and I still got an A. Like the teacher was like, yeah, she doesn't have to be here, right? It was a college prep school, but anyway, so for all that to say, I definitely came up with the insecurities of like, I cannot look dumb. I've got to
mhm.
like look like I know my shit all the time. And so like even when people were offering help, even when I hired freaking coaches to come into my world and see my mess, I would still be like, well, I need the coach to like me. And I wouldn't like ask them the freaking questions that I was paying them to solve, you know? And so really getting comfortable with being vulnerable and like kind of being dumb in certain circumstances so you can grow. Now, you said you didn't really get the training to be a leader. You also opened with all the wonderful things that you're doing, and you're responsible for a lot, especially with full sale partners as that continues to grow. Were
Yeah,
there other areas of that you felt like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I have no training, no foundation for this?
absolutely. When I So give a little bit of background, I came in as a CRM consultant, part CRM consultant, with for the first time having a utilization to be able to bill clients. So that was eye opening, to be a project manager and to have my own utilization. I also was hired to be the marketing director, and they had never had a marketing director or anybody doing marketing as well. So in both of those positions, I didn't have anybody to emulate. There was no documents, there was no like, here's how you do it, those types of things. So when I was being interviewed, one of the questions he asked is, I have none of this. Is this something you feel comfortable creating? And
Mm,
that's one of the things that I really do love, is creating stuff or identifying processes or how it is we can organize things. And even whenever I was doing training with the CRM person, I was well ahead of him. I was like, oh, you're doing this. And so I was
mm,
ahead of him. He's like, hang on. So I was just the type of person that would just take things by the reins and
mm,
just take them on. However, once I got to a point that the owner was ready to move on and chose me along with three other people to become owner of the company, I had to take on sales. And I remember turning to him saying, I don't do sales. And he was like, okay, well, let's talk about this. And what I really loved is that he focused on the things that I was good at and the
mm,
things that I could relate to. And so he asked me, okay, when you're meeting with a client and you're needing to understand how more about them, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I just ask them questions. He said, okay. And then as you're diving in, how is it that you end up getting to what it is that they need? And I'm like, well, I'm just understanding more about their problem and how it is that we can potentially solve it. He's like, well, that's sales. And
bada
so,
bing, bada boom. You got it, baby.
and so for me, one of the things that really taught me was looking at situations and reframing it. So sales isn't the guy that's trying to sell you the car and trying to sell you something you don't need. It is truly just understanding and listening to clients, asking them questions, and also, hey, I can tell them we're not a good fit. Holy crap, that's amazing. So I embraced that, and that became the way that we approach sales. And I think the other part of it is that I also opened myself up to saying, hey, I don't have all the answers. And I remember just really focusing on, like, hey, I know that there's other things out there to like the universe. And I ended up having something sort of like come my way. And I think that is one of the things that I've also focused on is when I don't have the answers, I simply say, I'm looking for, this, help me find who it is that I need to connect to or whatever it is. And I ended up getting connected to the Great Demo. And their particular process ended up really helping me. It was focusing on identifying the critical business issues, the specific things that someone actually wants and needs to be able to solve their problems, putting a dollar amount to really understand the value that you bring to it, so they then have the ability to come back and say, even though it's going to cost this amount, the return on investment is going to be this. So it put a process to it, which really helped me to feel more confident in what it is that I was doing from a sales perspective.
Just to have that structure there. Now, this is a shameless plug for our show. We are having a super cool sales consultant coming on the show next week. So if you're struggling with sales and you're like, how do I make this my own? Definitely come join us next week. Now, I want to bring some of this down a bit because you're approaching these issues with what sounds like an incredible amount of emotional intelligence here.
Mhm.
And that is actually not easy for most people. And I think we're maybe missing some of the practical elements here. And so I
Yep.
want to go back to something you said at the beginning. In every job, even before you started at a tech consulting firm, you always kind of dived into the tech and you're always kind of curious there. And
Yep.
so I'm curious about your natural inclination around tech and then also your ability to reflect. And so this is kind of like a two, triple, quadruple part question. So I'm hopefully you can bring it together for me because I'm also wondering, like, hey, were we always super reflective? Because that
Mhm.
personal reflection helps us approach everyday problems, whether they're in business or not, really well, right? We can have that awareness and we can reframe situations. So were you always really reflective, and that did that go hand in hand with tech
Mhm.
and problem solving, or where did these two things really marry for you in your career?
Yeah, I started off on the very logical side of the house. It wasn't until later in life that I really became more reflective. So, some of the things that I focused on early on in life was really like the 80-20 rule. So, we know that 80% of our challenges, if we really focus on some specific things, we can end up accomplishing and resolving a lot of issues. So, for example, whenever I was a CRM consultant, I would have to deal with the mindset of people feeling a little bit uneasy about doing CRM implementation, and they're overwhelmed and they're like, oh my gosh, we just have all this data and I just don't know how I'm going to get to it. So I would break it down and I'd say, okay, well, how many projects do you open on a yearly basis? And they would tell me whatever that number is. I'd say, okay, of those projects, how many of them do you actually put in proposals? And they were like, oh, it's just a fraction of those. And I'm like, okay, so if we just focus on those, we can get the majority of what it is you're needing for proposals. So if we think about the things that we're dealing at in life and we identify all of the challenges that we're dealing with and say, okay, what are some of the things that I could do that could solve the majority of those problems? So for me, that's how I approach things very early on in life. And I still will do that sort of just innately. It's just something I sort of do now, but I also add the further reflection of also understanding the people side, like how will people feel and how is it that it impacts people. So it's that reflection that ended up helping me more on the people side. The process side was super easy for me. Like I immediately understood because I had a logical brain in how to approach things. And it was those types of tools that would help me. And there's all kinds of them out there. So even Jesse talks about like the Eisenhower chart and things like that. So there's all kinds of tools that can help you. It's then getting to the next piece of the psychology. And funny enough, I went to school for criminal justice and psychology. So I didn't even go in what it is that I did, what I ended up doing, but it helped me down the road because it was the psychological side of things. So, from a marketing perspective, I had to profile people ultimately, and I wanted to be a profiler whenever I was in college. I wanted to be that person, but it helped me in marketing because then you identify, okay, well, what motivates people? What is the psychological reasons of why people are doing things? Because when you're dealing with tech, a lot of times it has nothing to do with the, hey, do these, press these buttons. It has to do with this person feels that they may look dumb. They've made this decision. And if it's not successful, it means that it could potentially be their job. So it's under this understanding and reflecting on the psychology of sometimes why people are doing things versus just helping them with the how to break things down and how to do things from a technical perspective.
And if anyone that's listening, if you don't feel like if you didn't take a college course on psychology and you aren't a nerd like me that has watched all of Criminal Minds and trying to be like Gideon my whole
Same
life,
here.
okay? Although after I had kids, I was like, I can't watch Criminal Minds anymore. I was like, this is letting evil into my house. So anyway, so if you don't have kind of that background, I would go back to what Sarah said earlier of like just being curious. Like being curious is what's going to help you with your team. It's going to help you with sales. It's going to help you really understand
Yeah.
people without that psychology background, and you'll start to pick up on patterns in people if you're just asking those super curious questions. Now, what was also interesting in what you said was in your 80-20 rule and in being reflective, what it reminded me of is something I tell clients sometimes of like, you've got these KPIs for why? Like,
Mhm.
what are these numbers telling you? Like, first off, you're collecting the data. Are you even looking back at the KPIs in the first place for it to tell you anything? And if so, like, how are you then leveraging that? And so I see so many people put together processes because that's what they think they should do. And it has nothing to do with the actual strategy or the goal that they're trying to achieve. So just reminder for everyone, like if you're putting effort into anything, like make sure there's a reason for it. Like we're too busy in life to be doing things that don't got a freaking reason.
So
Yeah.
on KPIs, because we deal with that, one of the other things I would say to think about is the unintended consequences as well. So sometimes you set out and you choose particular KPIs, and then sometimes we don't think about the unintended consequences. And I'll give you an example. So early on, whenever I started with this company, everybody had a utilization and they were really dinged if they didn't hit that utilization. Well, what that ended up doing is everybody became their own profit center in a lot of ways. What that also negatively impacted is the collaboration. So people didn't have time to help you out because they were too busy dealing with their own. So you do have to have a balance in what it is that you're doing as well. So if you're wanting people to hit their utilization, but you also want them to be collaborative, you have to understand what you need to do to be able to encourage that other piece as well. So just think about those types of things as well. It took us a while to rechange and to change our culture to become more collaborative and to also look at how we can have people focus on all of the different things. Like we do need people to focus on marketing and sales in order to continue to bring in from seller doers. So sometimes it's lowering that utilization and looking at the impact of that, and then allowing the additional pieces that you're also wanting in your company.
Mm. Oh, well, that goes back to let's be precise about what we want that end goal to be. And so, for another example, there, so I used to work at an oil and gas company. They did oil and gas drilling. They also did software development. And their example for that was actually talking about OSHA. So they talked about like, hey, if you're like, you can't just set a KPI of like zero OSHA incidents on an oil rig or something.
Mhm.
Because that, the unintended consequence is people actually just not recording or not reporting a safety incident rather than actually promoting safe practices on the oil rig. So you've got to be really precise about what are you actually trying to accomplish? Is it safety? Is it a collaborative culture? Is it customer satisfaction without risking employee satisfaction, right? Like, what are you trying to achieve? And then work backwards to, okay, how do we get that done? And what are the leading indicators that will help us know, yeah, we're on track? Were there other moments in that, like, transition to a collaborative culture that you're like, oh, okay, I kind of made some dumb mistakes here. We've got to course correct a little bit, and we didn't quite do what we set out to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is there's always, I think, a dark and a light side to everything. So it's like the pendulum. So you know the little you pull the little ball and it hits it and the other side goes up and then it comes back. So we have to think about like how far that pendulum is going to go on each side whenever we make choices, choices. So I think it's just understanding that other ramification. So as an example, if you are focused on really being people oriented, that's a great thing. It also depends on how far you're going to go and the things that you're going to do and give away and how, how willing you are to allow even, so much freedom that then people start to take advantage of those types of things.
Mm.
So it's then making sure that you also have the guardrails or the parameters in place of, but here's the also the expectations. We allow flexibility, we allow adaptability, but you still also have to have the framework in what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable within whatever the adaptable flexibility that you're providing to people. So I think
Mm.
that's one of the key things that I learned. As well as an example, I always said, I don't care when it is that you work, as long as clients aren't complaining that they can't get a hold of you and people internally are not complaining that they can't get a hold of you, because a lot of things can be done late at night. People have things that they need to do with their kids, they have doctor's appointment, things like that, and we are 100% virtual. Well, I can't keep tabs on every single person. I have to have trust in what it is that they're doing. So I also have to have established, like, here's expectations of what each role is. We're also meeting on a consistent basis to check in and see how those things are going. So sometimes when you don't have those check-ins or when you don't have the guardrails, I would say, in place, you then open yourself up to people taking advantage of it.
Oh, and let me ground that for everyone. If you haven't caught on to the fact that sometimes Sam here is a hot mess, let me just really nail the head in the coffin there. So what we're talking here is really like that long leash management style. And when I first started growing out my team, I was like, I'm going to be the best people manager ever. It's going to be awesome. And I gave people such a long leash, but I didn't have the guardrails of expectations, right? I was kind of like, this is kind of where we want to end up, right? And then I would check in and I'd be frustrated.
Yep.
But then I would be like, what am I doing that's wrong? Or they kind of suck. And I couldn't quite like figure out like why things weren't clicking. I'm like, I'm an awesome people manager. Why aren't people loving me? And it was like, well, because I'm giving them this long leash without also guiding them. You got to really set those expectations. Now, can you not leave me stranded and alone on the island of dumb mistakes? And is there a specific example there of whether it was on a project or with an old team member and they're not connected to you on LinkedIn anymore? So we can kind of make fun of them a little bit. But was there a moment that happened?
Many times. And it wasn't always with my department. It was things with other departments as well. But I have had situations where I've had to reel things back and say, oh, we've become such good friends that what am I also not evaluating in making sure that I'm being consistent in what it is that I'm doing as well. So
Mm.
I think that it's those types of things. Like sometimes you become such good friends, or you become, and I've heard people talk about, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be that person. Like there are some people that would say, business is business. You don't become friends if you're a boss. And I'm like, well, why? Like I always like question that. I was like, well, why don't you? And I learned, why it is that you need to still have those guidelines or those that that frame in place of like, hey, I need to be able to have that hard conversation and be able to have that hard conversation when I see that things aren't being done.
Yeah.
So I would say that's also the other coin of being the people person. Also, that can also, if you're not very clear with expectations, it rises and lets you know when situations happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, this is I'm thinking of like my kids right now. You don't want to be your kid's friend. Like you want them to respect you, but you're not their freaking friend. You're their
Mm,
parent. You're their leader. But I do think you can have friendly relationships with employees. And like
I
there's some
agree.
examples here. Yeah. So like on the extreme, my mom is my ops manager. My mom has made mistakes as my ops manager.
Yeah,
And I'm not just like, oh, it's fine. Like you're my mom. I can't tell you anything. You're awesome. Like, here's your pedestal. I'm like, no, I'm like, okay, like, hey, we kind of missed the mark here. Here's how we have to correct. And like, here's what we need to avoid in the future. Here's where you should pull me in if it's not on this course, right? If we're not on
yeah,
track here. But my husband also, amazing manager. I've actually learned quite a bit from him over the years of his management style. And he's had subordinates, employees, whoever that invite him to concerts, that invite him to their birthday parties, to and like, hey, let's go drink together. It's not like a cringy happy hour with your boss thing because he has that friendship with them. But on top of that, they show up to work on Monday knowing like, okay, he's got expectations. Like, are you going to meet those expectations? And there's
yeah.
an incredible amount of respect there. So it is possible.
Mhm.
You don't have to pendulum swing between friend with no expectations and like hardline boss, right?
Yeah,
And you post quite a few different pictures of you and your Full Sail team.
yeah.
What has that evolution been like of really forming these friendships and making sure shit gets done?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned over time, and this wasn't something I went in really knowing, it was like, oh, I sort of discovered that that was something that was important. And I intuitively knew it, but didn't really recognize it. Is that one, if you take care of your employees will then take care of your clients. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that you are a fun environment. So it's not just about work, it's also about how do we connect as individuals. And also encouraging that with our clients as well. We don't want it to be, and one of the things that people have always said about our company is that we're fun, but we also get shit done and we also know what it is we're doing. Like that is, they expect excellence in what it is that we're doing, but they also don't want to be bored out of their mind with someone that's explaining something very technical. They want
Mm.
someone that can add a little bit more fun into the learning process as well. And so that's one of the key things that I've also learned through leading and branding. You know, branding is super important. I think it goes well beyond, and I don't think a lot of people really focus on that. It goes beyond the logo and the colors and all of those types of things. It's also branding is on the HR side of the house, and that's one of the things that I really focused on is making sure from an HR perspective, how is it that we're interacting with employees? It was important to me what that experience was like when we were hiring them. And also as we were onboarding them, that we're not just throwing them in 2 weeks. So that's something I've continued to try to focus on. I still have more work to do that I'm wanting to do there, but making sure that people are really feeling supported for a longer period of time and making sure that that process, for me, onboarding within any of my employees is year long. So I set up quarterly meetings, but we have sort of goals to understand like where they're at and where it is that they're progressing. And I try to do a little bit of a slower, sometimes onboarding with certain things, not saying, oh, by 6 months you're going to be a full on consultant. No, that's ridiculous. You can't have someone that has not been a consultant just immediately be at 60% utilization. So you have to have a progression. And what are the skills and the things that they have to learn along the way as well? So that's been one of the things that's been important to me is looking beyond just the branding of what our colors are and things like that, but what is it that we're known for within the industry? So when we reach out to our clients, What is it that they say about us? What is it that our employees say about us? That to me is ultimately your brand.
Oh yeah, I mean our core values, they have to exist for how you show up for your clients and how you expect employees to show up for your clients, but also how you are showing up for your employees, right? Now, I got a curveball question here because I'm a little curious, and we've got this slower onboarding process, which I do definitely appreciate and respect the level of engagement you have with them over a 12 months. But I'm curious to if we're hiring super high performers, and I'm not saying like, hey guys, if you hire a rock star, they're going to be ready to go to kick ass day one, right? So I'm not advocating for that, but I'd love to know from your perspective, if we're hiring awesome people, how do they deal with that slow burn or like onboarding process? Is there any kind of like antsiness that happens with them of like, okay, I want to go ahead and dive into XYZ?
Yeah, I think it does depend on the level of experience. So we have a good mix. And most of the people that I'm onboarding, or a lot of people, have never, one, been a consultant. Two, have
Mhm.
never been a CRM consultant, for example. So there's a lot of methodology and things that have to be taught along the way. And also just how to actually be a consultant, because people aren't taught the soft skills or the other things that go along with the conversations, having hard conversations with clients, the things that you need to do to be able to encourage and deal with situations before they get out of control, how to deal with budgets, how to, there's so many
Mhm.
different aspects. So I focus on each of those different types of things, and I would say it's geared more towards someone who is not deeper in their career, more people that have been like for example, a marketing coordinator or a marketing manager, and they understand the system, but they don't understand the system to the level of what we need them to understand it. So I would say it's those types of people. We have
Mhm.
had individuals that have had years of experience, and they're like the admin and they understand things. Those people get a much shorter, onboarding
Mhm.
on, they really are sort of thrown in, and it's like, hey,
Right.
within 90 days you're going to be this
Mhm.
much billable, and at 6 months you're going to be full on billable. So those types of people have a much, have a shorter on ramp or onboarding, where I'm talking about people that have skill sets but have never been in this position. And you don't
Mhm.
find just people that have, one, Dell Tech experience, and two, also understand how to be a CRM consultant or have even
Mhm.
been a consultant. Most of them have been in like a parallel position that they haven't been exposed to that.
Okay, that's a really great then perspective then to like you're at a position where you can hire people with less of the technical skills, still evaluating for core values and soft skills and like the
Mhm.
potential, right? But
Yep.
hey, we can take our time to train. Now, if we ground this in the business perspective, give me an idea of okay, so we had this journey from wanting to be a more collaborative culture. We also said we want to be a more fun culture so employees will take care of their clients. What was the timeline of this evolution? And then how did you see this really impact client satisfaction or impact revenue or other growth goals?
Yeah, I would say it goes back to the marketing side of the house. So, one of the things a lot of times people will focus on is the sales immediately, like we need sales. And I realized, hey, without any marketing messaging or without things that we can really truly provide, and just to sort of back up a little bit, when we started with Full Sail Partners, I had been with the company for 4 years, but we had gone
Okay.
through transitions. So I started out with one company. That company was merged with another company, and then 2 years later they demerged and we became Full Sail Partners. So I had to brand the company, do everything from a marketing perspective in 30 days. I had 30 days to do a
Mm.
website, brand, everything. I was spending 16-hour days getting this company up and going to be able to send out an email announcing that this change was happening. So that in itself was quite an eye opener of all the things we had to rebrand, do all of those types of things and have everything in place the moment we started 30 days later. And then whenever I think about the other things that had to happen, we had to focus on how do we build the marketing content that we truly need in order to help support the sales side. So for me, it was a progression of things. It was the marketing, then helping the things we need to do from a sales perspective. Then what do we need to do from a BD perspective to be able to then help the salespeople, so they're not having to do all of the work. Then as we continued, I was really looking at client satisfaction and how do we deal with the issues that are constantly coming up, like things that clients were unhappy. So I focused on a particular tool called the client feedback tool. So it was by Client Savvy, and we integrated it with our own system. But what that allowed us to be able to do is set a process in place that allowed us to be able to get feedback sooner rather than later, because most of the time people do yearly surveys or they'll do it at the end of the project. Well, I'm conducting an autopsy at that point. Like there's nothing I can do with that situation. I need to know sooner rather than later. So we built in a process that we said during the kickoff, we were going to ask for feedback. What we're really wanting from you is your perspective. How can we change our process, or how is it we can better adapt to what it is that you're wanting as a client? Because the project is about them. It's not about us. Are we serving what it is that they're looking for? So we needed to know those things sooner. But then you're also dealing with people in general don't like confrontation. So it had to be a way to be able to do that where it was as easy as possible for people to be able to give us feedback. And so that took, all of those things took a while for them to, as I came in and started to take lead on everything marketing sales, it took several years for those things to be in place. But then as those things took hold, I would say that it probably took about 5 years for me to really build and to do all of these types of things. And now we're seeing the real benefit of all of those things. Like we are very well known in the industry. People know us. They even consider us, like if they're looking for any content, they come to us, because one of the things I focused on was free education. So educating our clients to understand the new possibilities, but then come to us whenever you need the expertise. But providing people free information provides you and demonstrates that you are a resource for whatever it is. So that's one of the things we really focused on, is being the expert and being known as the expert in the industry. And then also, I would say we also focused on that fun side. So doing things that maybe were, not quite that professional, I'll put in quotes, or like the thing that they always said is like the stuffy corporate. They like the fact that we're not the stuffy corporate type
Yeah.
company. So it was really focusing and doing things that were more fun.
Every time I hear corporate, I always think back, and he's going to get so annoyed that I'm still picking on him. But Josh Loopker called me corporate. He didn't think that I was fun until he met me in person. And so I'm like, okay, like hot mess Sam here for y'all. Okay, so a 5-year timeline after that followed or was preceded by 4 years of transition after transition after transition,
Mhm.
brand new brand company. 5 years later was really the timeline there. And then how long have you now been? What's the full timeline? Sorry.
17 years.
Wow, that's so cool. And the fact that people come to you, they know your name, that's amazing growth. And also just is a reflection of all the effort that you've put in as a leader, and how you show up for your team. And also just all
Yeah.
those photos of your team. Everyone's like seems genuinely excited to hang out together. And I think that that's really cool and sometimes kind of rare to find on a team.
One of the things that we
Yeah.
ended up doing just to be able to sort of set the stage is when we set up our website, one of the things we did is we had everyone do a professional photo and a fun photo. So if you hover
Oh.
over, everybody is doing something different on the one that you hover over. So for example, mine is singing because I love singing. And then there are other people that love certain teams. So they have like their team, or people that like cooking, or like all
Mm.
these snowboarding. And so it's just fun. We have someone in a chicken head. Like it's just fun to do and show a different side of your personality.
Oh, that's fun. I am a little jealous that you could sing. I always say that's how God humbled me, was by
Oh,
making me somewhat tone deaf. Because if I could sing, I would just be whoever I'm going to totally blank on her name, but the diva that she does the singing voice for Elsa, Adina
oh,
Menzel.
yes.
I would just, that would be my dream. I'd just be like, no one talk to me. I sing. I'm on Broadway, right? But thank you so much, Sarah, for really sharing the evolution of that and all the lessons that you've learned. Is there any other, I mean, I know we touched on a lot, but is there any other little tidbit of advice that you're like, hey, if you're trying to be a better leader or you're trying to have less insane moments in business, like start here?
Hmm. I would say the newer thing that I would and continue to investigate is AI. And I know that some people get very skittish whenever they think about AI. They're very turned off, and other people get really excited. But I do think that there's a lot of benefit when you embrace technology and the newer things that are coming out. I really embraced AI, and it has helped me in so many ways to be able to stay organized. So everything from simple things to when you do Zoom or when you do any type of meeting, utilizing the AI to be able to help you with the action items and the things that you're doing. It helps to, so you can stay present in the meeting and then also have those action items and the notes that you need to do. It helps with brainstorming. It helps with just understanding potential questions that you could ask. Like if you're struggling with like how would I do this, or how would I get deeper into understanding things from a sales perspective, you can put in like the type of role and what would be the key things this person might be interested in. So thinking about things that maybe you don't know, just asking AI even questions, but then also starting to look at automation and how beyond that AI can also help to streamline processes and make things more simplified. As well. So, for me, one of the biggest things that I would encourage people to do is not look at things as a threat, but look at them again as an opportunity for you to learn more and to see how it actually might benefit you.
What I really appreciated there was my favorite word, simplify, because I see so many people, they're like, I'm gonna go automate. And I'm like, that's a hot mess process. Like, you're gonna automate, and it's still gonna be a hot mess for you. Like, simplify, but use the tools to help understand where you can simplify. And
Yep.
I'd also say, because I've admitted to some people, like, sometimes I feel lost in the world of AI. Like, there's just so many new things. And you could try to find newsletters to stay up to date on AI, but it's not gonna always be relevant to what you need. And then you still have to decipher that. So something I've been doing lately is using ChatGPT and even like the ChatGPT agent or research mode. And since it understands what I do, my brand, my clients, the pain points I solve, all of that, I can say, what are new ways I can leverage AI? What are new tools that are out? And then just cut to the chase there instead of like trying to research or watch YouTube videos on like what I should be doing. It just kind of gives me those guardrails to that. So I don't feel as lost, and it helps with that brainstorming. So if you are feeling lost in AI, maybe just start there and see where it goes.
You also hit on something that's really a passion for me. We have people that come to us for automation all the time, and the biggest suggestion that I would have is do it manually first. Like understand what that process really looks like before
Mm,
you start to want to automate it. Because if you don't have a clear idea, you then are programming things that may not actually be what you want. So
mhm.
that's one of the things that we always recommend to people is, hey, let's do this. Let's go through this process from a manual perspective when we're implementing something brand new or adding automation, because you really need to understand the implications of what it is you're doing too.
And that comes back because I'm always connecting the dots. Where's our through line? Be precise in what you're trying to achieve. If you
Yes.
don't have that clarity, you shouldn't be starting any new project. You should be sitting down and thinking about what your precise endpoint is. All right. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today. This has just been an awesome conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know it went all over the place and in different things, but hopefully it provided a lot of good insight into things people might consider.
Yeah, lots of tidbits and ways to get your wheels turning.